Should get this meeting underway and on record. Thank you. So let me read my, so I'll call the meeting to order and read the statement, which says that the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is August 31st at 3:04 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So with that, I will do a roll call. Mike Edmonds.
I am present.
Lori Miserbo.
Present.
Jay Young, I am here, and Vicky Cusino, who is not here. We have 3 out of 4, so we have a quorum. Number 2 on the agenda is the review and adoption of the June meeting minutes. Are there any questions, concerns, revisions about the June meeting minutes? Without objection, I will approve the meeting minutes for June. Move on to item number 3, the subcommittee purpose, goals, and membership, ideas for action, and review equity topics. So I think we talked a little bit about this when we tried to meet last week, but I don't really have a ton to talk about, and I guess I'm really wondering if it's time for us as a subcommittee to regroup. You know, obviously we spent quite a bit of time talking about the equity study. There was a delay that has finally gone before the full commission. And I can report that the class at Arizona State University is indeed going to undertake kind of a preliminary equity study. Allison and I and Jim and Ann were on a call this week. It was the first meeting with the students, but basically they're going to survey what other communities are doing, how they're measuring equity, you know, some other reports, and what something like that could look like for the commission and for the city of Tucson. Allison, you were there. Was there anything else that would be worth kind of reporting on from that meeting?
I don't think so. I think they're just getting started. Wish I could take their class. I might just audit it along with them. It's it's zoning for equity. It's like, wish that I had that in grad school. So thanks, Jay, for making that happen.
Sure, and I will continue to kind of update the subcommittee and the commission as that class through the semester works on the project and comes to a deliverable at the end of the semester. So I don't know if there are any questions about that, but I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions about that at this point. Okay. So I guess I would like to pose to everyone here today, now that we have the equity study at least somewhat underway or moving forward, I think in a positive direction. What can we do as a subcommittee? What should we do? What interests do y'all have? I'm really interested in that. And, you know, is there anything else that we have been talking about that kind of remains unfinished? So I guess I'm really asking, where do we go from here? What do we want to do and what do we want to work on?
So the equity study is underway. How long will it take to be completed, maybe?
Yeah, so it's really like a pre-study, Mike. I mean, I think that's the way to look at it. You know, what are other communities doing? around equity and housing equity, and kind of what kind of documents do they have, and things like that. So the class is doing that kind of background research, and it's a semester-long class. So by the beginning, maybe end of December, they should have something to the commission, to the city, with what they've discovered, so that then the commission and the city, I guess, can figure out kind of where to go from there. So that was a very long answer. The short answer is December.
Okay, I'm going to steal Joe's question. Thanks, Joe. So if y'all are monitoring the class, could we see what the syllabus looks like?
Sure, I'm happy to share the syllabus. There's an MOU that kind of describes what the class is going to do. Trying to think what other documents. What I know that there obviously those documents were not presented, before this meeting. What's the procedure to get those to the commission? Can I just like email them to people, or do they need to go through? What do I need to do there?
Yeah, I think emailing to everybody is fine. I think the open meeting law is just that you don't then email back and forth discussion about those items, that you discuss them here in the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm certainly happy to share that. And I mean, frankly, if anybody is really interested, if you look at the MOU, there are specific dates that I will be, and folks from the city, kind of whoever's available, will meet with the class. And as far as I'm concerned, really anybody on the commission can certainly participate in those meetings. In a lot of ways, I think the more the merrier.
Put me on that mailing list, somebody, please.
Will do. I'll email those documents out to the subcommittee here, and then probably, I guess, it'd be wise to do it for the full commission as well.
I know I'm part of neither of those groups, but if I could be included, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I don't see why not. Allison, do you see why not? Yeah, great. Any other thoughts, comments about the class and the work that they're going to be doing? Okay, we can obviously continue to talk about that at our future meetings. So there's that. And then I guess on to the kind of next question. What do y'all want to do from here? Where do we go from here as the Housing Segregation Subcommittee? I know, as I mentioned, we've got the study moving forward. I also know that, I think the Affordable Housing Group has also put together kind of a list of recommendations. So it seems like at least two of the subcommittees, us and the Affordable Housing one, have kind of come up with some work products. So what do you guys think about where we go from here?
Just because, and we kind of had a very short conversation about this, meaning me and Jay, since the word equity came up here in the past few minutes. Do you want to, while we're at this point in the agenda, chat a little bit about the Tucson Norte Sur?
Oh yeah,
no?
that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Because Jay had some questions, and I participated as a community ambassador. I'm not going to give a big, long, drawn-out thing about it. So let me give you the headlines and the highlights as I see it. So first of all, if you're really interested more about Tucson Norte Sur, here's the website address, and you can search; it'll pop up. But it's Tucson Norte hyphen Sur, TUCSON NORTE hyphen SUR.com. Tucson Norte Sur, basically, again, just giving you the basics of it. They're considering, and some people I think miss the word consider. They are considering a high capacity transit line, and that's still debatable as to how you want to describe that, between Tucson Mall and the airport. The routes have not been written in stone. The major streets that could be involved. Right now, Oracle to the Ronstadt Center, down to Park, yes, through South Tucson, through South 6th Avenue to the airport. Now, there's also the possibility of considering, instead of Oracle Road, North Stone. And I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have the other southern routes. And then it's cut basically up into 4 parts. They cut them in half and then cut them again. So you have the northern section, the southern section, the mid-north, and then the mid-south, right? And they have their own glossary of terms in general about, if you go on that website, you go to the sitemap. So they have their own definition of, which isn't really different, but everybody does have a different wording of it. Affordable housing, they have that. They have a definition for bus rapid transit as they see it for the study. Equity, there's a section on equity as well. And I'm scrolling through this real quick. And then we get to the information about housing. Maybe I'll pause here and then get into that. There has been some concern, and rightfully so, in my view, justly, about segregation and property values going up, and all of a sudden, I don't want to use the word rich people, but people of substance picking up properties and flipping them, and big businesses taking over little businesses and things like that. So the thoughts about within the discussion of Tucson Norte Sur has been, how do we keep gentrification from happening?
Mike,
I don't know if anybody has an answer. Yes, go ahead.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to interject at this moment, Mike, to strongly suggest that this item be discontinued and put on a future agenda. It wasn't agendized.
Yeah, understood. Just equity. Okay, we could do that. That's fine. I just thought I could tie them together, but no. All right.
Ernesto, you don't think that under ideas for action and review equity topics that we can cover this? Because it feels like something that we might want to take action on, and certainly has equity components.
Well,
So,
this was very this is very specific, and I'm just thinking, just to avoid any problems or conflicts.
Okay, I was just trying to give a thumbnail sketch. That's
Allison?
yeah, no, just I hate being open meeting law wet blanket. But I would likely that agenda item, we should probably start being more specific in the future as well, with kind of what we want those items to be. And yeah, happy to agendize a full conversation and invite, anyone from like transportation who's helping run that as well, if folks want to talk about it.
That was something I was going to mention too, as to who to contact. So yeah.
Well, point taken. Appreciate y'all pointing that out, because we certainly don't want to run afoul of open meeting laws. It is what it is. So yeah, why don't we, if there's no objection, for the next meeting, let's do agendize this topic, because I do think it is, there's a lot to dig into here, particularly around equity. I mean, I think, maybe this really, I'm glad you mentioned gentrification as well, Mike, because, that's something that I don't think that we've really dug into, obviously as a subcommittee, but really as the full commission. And I feel like, when, if I remember back when I was filling out the application, one of the main things that this commission was supposed to do is look at gentrification, and projects like this. I mean, historically, infrastructure projects that improve areas do raise property values. People do get displaced. And I think that this is a really great example of where this commission should really be leading the conversation about, okay, if we're going to have infrastructure projects, which every city does inevitably, what are we doing as a city to make sure that folks are able to continue to live in the area if they want to, not get displaced? There's actually a really great article in the New York Times in the past month or so about a bridge project that's going to connect the capital side of DC with Anacostia, and the gentrification potential. The gentrification that's happened already, the project is not actually scheduled for construction. There's been no approval. Just the idea that the project is going to happen has already raised property values and is causing some gentrification. So it's a really good kind of view of what these projects can bring. And I think it's a real puzzle about how, people don't get displaced when, the inevitable infrastructure happens. So, I think that's something that Tucson hasn't looked at very in depth. And I think that's part of the reason this commission was founded. Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so two things. You're right. The reason this commission exists, the Housing Commission was essentially defunct. And there were a group of people that asked for some kind of action, somebody with the city to look into displacement and gentrification. And the mayor called for a displacement and gentrification task force, if you remember, and then said, I don't know, we've got too many task forces. Let's reform the commission, and we'll make it a commission that focuses on equitable housing and development. So yeah, that's explicitly why the CHD is here. I put the link to the article I think you're talking about, Jay, in the chat, because I actually had that up. And when you started talking about this, I understand if we can't focus this on as a Norte Sur discussion, but if we're talking about equity topics, then yeah, planning equity into a project like transit or redevelopment is essential. And that article is great. It's tremendous. And one of the things they're talking about in there that piqued my interest was, well, I'll give you, in fact, if I can find it, I'll give you the pull quotes while we're here. But,
while you do that, let me just state that this has really piqued my interest, because for those who don't know, I was born and raised in DC, and I remember my family living in DC, and it hurts. It hurts not living. Those properties are gone. I used to live there, and we used to play there, and we can't do that anymore, and it hurts.
Yeah, so the quotes I wanted to reference, the first one's from a Dr. Immergluck who's working on this. If we just recreate segregation in a different spatial arrangement so that everybody near the belt line is affluent and poor folks have to move from the belt line, I'm not sure if that's an improvement. Well, he's talking about Atlanta. I'm not sure if that's an improvement over what Atlanta looked like in 1980. The lesson of the belt line is simple. Acquire land as soon as possible, as soon as you can, through any means necessary. And the other part was about kind of the benefits of trying to build in equity. And so there are less tangible benefits too. Shortly after Vaughn Perry, a longtime Ward 8 resident, began working for the Bridge Park as its equitable development manager, he started workshops to teach residents about community organizing and city planning processes. More than 70 residents from Ward 8 have taken the workshop. 2 have gone on to run for public office. People understanding that they have power to invoke change in their own community is the thing that resonates the most to me. And one of the comments was from Node housing scholar David Madden on this piece was, if you're just allocating housing along market lines, any transportation or public realm improvement is guaranteed to cause displacement. So new infrastructure must always be paired with non-market policies to help poorer residents stay in place. A rent freeze, community land trust, social housing, etc. In the piece, in fact, one of the innovations that it's brought for equity is they're using a community land trust to help people who are renting set up a co-op so that they can have housing that's controlled by that community and not by a market where somebody can raise the rents and cause some displacement there. It's a really terrific piece. The quotes are really good. Immergluck's coming out with a book this fall, I believe. I saw on his website. There's a lot in there. There's a bunch to unpack.
Just as an aside, I don't know if you guys saw that the author of the article, Megan Kimball, she lived in Tucson. She's a good friend of mine and my wife's, and she lived in Tucson for quite a number of years and was one of the lead editors of Edible Tucson when it was still in publication, the local food magazine that was published for, 3, 4, 5 years. So she's got ties to Tucson, and she has a book coming out about how highways have acted as a big segregator over the years. and the experience of Austin. But she might be a good person to actually have come talk to the commission as a whole about infrastructure and equity, because the bus rapid transit or a transit corridor like this obviously isn't a freeway. It is what is coming, right? I mean, it's what cities will be doing in the future, I think, are doing and will be doing. And if we don't wrap our heads around that now, I think to your point, Joe, and some of the quotes from the article, we'll just be segregated in a different way. So, yeah, that's great. And, the idea of community land trusts and having community groups and organizations be doing work before it happens is a really great idea, and maybe something that we as a commission could put forward. Go ahead, Joe. Joe, do you have something else?
No, I don't think so. I as it relates to the possible Norte Sur project that I know we're not specifically talking about. My first question when we brought that presentation here was, how much land do you have land banked around these routes already? And the answer was, well, we're kind of looking at it and we're looking into it, which means it hasn't happened yet. That's a concern, and that's explicitly what they were talking about with the Beltline in Atlanta, and it's what they're talking about around this DC project too.
I wonder if since we're kind of going down this road, so to speak, I wonder if really kind of something that we could look at as a subcommittee and bring forth to the full commission is looking at infrastructure generally through an equity lens, how that relates to housing and how that has caused gentrification and will continue to cause gentrification in the future. Again, I don't know exactly what we would be bringing to the full commission, but I don't know if there's some action items that we could have, or I'm also a little bit stumped at this point. I think, again, kind of coming into this meeting, now that study is underway, the equity study, at least to a certain extent, it's like, well, what do we do between now and then? How do we talk about these things? What, you know what I mean? So anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but just thinking out loud.
So if you're talking about the displacement and gentrification, I think we've already got a toe in the door on that as a city based on the Gary Pivo work with the Central Business District / GPLET IID area, where looked at that and said, I mean, I can get the numbers for you, but something like 74% of those census tracts has seen displacement and gentrification. And in historic neighborhoods, even down to Barrio Viejo and some of those, we were seeing exodus of minority populations, and those areas getting distinctly whiter over the survey period, which I believe covered just the central business, the one that where the has been in effect. So we know that is happening in that specific area. And Dr. Pivo stopped short of saying, well, it's related to GPLEX or it's related to the streetcar line and the transit improvements. But I think it's pretty obvious to most people that what you're looking at is some combination of a lot of those factors.
Right.
So I don't know how that relates to gentrification and displacement in the broader community, and whether we have a good finger on the pulse of that. But at least we've got that one piece of work on this.
That's a good point. Hi, Vicki. Welcome.
Hi, so sorry. I ran late from a meeting with our independent auditor. It's that time of year, as you that's probably your time of year too.
Oh, for sure. No problem. Glad to have you. Go ahead, Allison.
Just thinking about the next few months too, and again, open meeting law, remembering that if all of this subcommittee wants to go to those meetings with students, that we probably have to actually agendize those meetings.
right.
So what might be better is if, yeah, just keeping that equity study as an agenda item on this, on these committee meetings, and Jay, you can kind of give an update of what's going on, and if there are kind of discussion questions or resources that the students are interested in hearing back from this group, that might, I can just keep adding that to the agenda as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And Vicky, just to fill you in, what we talked about at the kind of the top of the meeting was the students at ASU that are going to be doing kind of what I guess we're calling a pre-study for the equity study that the subcommittee has asked the city to undertake. So the students are going to look at other jurisdictions to see kind of how they're approaching equity and housing equity, what kind of other studies are out there to lay the groundwork potentially for the city to do something similar to really establish that baseline of equity that we've been talking about. And then we moved on, and Mike was talking about the Norte Sur high capacity transit project, but as staff has alerted us, it's not on the agenda, so we're needing to be careful about talking about that specifically, but it sparked a broader conversation about infrastructure and how infrastructure typically displaces folks, and generally what the city is doing about gentrification and displacement in a broader context of infrastructure. So I think that's kind of where we are there. And what I was also thinking about, in my neighborhood, Santa Rita Park has been in the news a lot because, it's part of the receiving money as part of the park bond, I guess, $2-3 million overhaul. And Santa Rita Park is a big hangout for homeless folks during the day. And there's a lot of talk about where those people are going to go, what's going to happen. So, again, it's like, has there really been a real equity lens applied? I mean, I know people are concerned, but what is really happening? I think the other thing have been thinking about that project in particular, just kind of as an aside, is just because the park gets remodeled, does that mean that all of a sudden homeless folks are no longer going to be able to congregate there? I don't think anybody said that, but that's kind of the assumption. So anyway, I don't know if we can not talk about that project directly either, but anyway, it's just infrastructure idea for action.
Yeah, we'll definitely encourage, we can kind of specifically agendize any of these things for future conversations, and I'll make sure to work with Jay on those items sooner than like the day before. I promise, Jay.
Yeah, Allison, would you agendize the Santa Rita Park as well, just in case we want to talk about that? Go ahead,
Will
Vicky.
do.
The study that the students are, what is the issue? Just if everybody wanted to meet with them, it has to be.
So the way that it's worked, so the first meeting with the students was held this week. I attended, Allison attended, and Chaneka attended, and Jim Toffel attended, and we were just talking about going forward how the subcommittee, and I guess really the full commission can, would, or should participate. And I'm open to really anybody attending. There are going to be like maybe a half dozen meetings with the students on Mondays over the semester as they're working on this project, so that they can have feedback from us. And I was just saying, as far as I'm concerned, anybody could come to those meetings that wanted to, but Allison also just reminded us that there could be some quorum issues. So having that on our agenda is probably necessary.
So can I just ask, how are they doing the study? Is it just research, or are they doing interviews, surveys? What does that entail?
Yeah, by and large, it's research. And what I will do is I'll share the kind of things that the students have agreed to do. What was the other thing? There were two things I was going to share. There was that, and what was the other? I'm blanking right now.
Syllabus?
Yeah, the syllabus for the class. So I'll share those with the subcommittee, and then I'll share them with the full commission as well. so that we all have a much better idea of kind of what's transpiring, I guess.
Okay, so if it's just research, like, going through research, that's fine. But I would be interested in talking about what they produce and in what format to ensure that it's fully accessible.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so we kind of went back a little bit now. Let's move forward. We got to Santa Rita Park. We can't maybe talk about that directly, but it does fall in kind of our bigger infrastructure conversation. So what next, y'all? What other thoughts do we have about kind of what we've been talking about and where to go from here as a subcommittee? I think that's kind of the train of thought we've been on.
Right. And I'll try to frame it along with what are we thinking about for the future, Neto, so I don't go too far. just call me out if I do. I'll try that too. How about future possibility topics or issues? And I might need or might request actually Allison to weigh in on this because I'm just weighing into it now myself, and it may pertain to our committee. Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative. Do you think that might be something good to talk about in this committee, Allison?
Sorry, I'm having coughing fits over here, just swallowing things going down the wrong pipe. Sure. Yeah, I mean, so the Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative that the city is working on right now is through the National League of Cities, kind of starting to think about how, what role the city has in economic mobility. And so we've sort of been looking at Tucson House through our Thrive in the O5 and Choice Neighborhoods work, supporting residents specifically residents in Tucson House who are ready to, start thinking about economic mobility and, maximizing benefits, increasing income, things like that. And how do we support folks through that? So, it's equity related, it's income related. I don't know if it's something
that's what I was
that
wondering if
the
it
subcommittee is interested in or not.
Yeah, I was trying to figure. I assume there are portions of it that relate to housing. Is what I'm saying.
Well, it's hard to have economic mobility if there's not adequate housing at different levels throughout a community, right? I mean, that's part of the problem with segregation, is that it makes it hard to have economic mobility if people don't have the resources and opportunities that they need to be more mobile economically, so to speak. So yeah, why don't we put that on the agenda as well? We might as well. So at least if we want to talk about it, we can.
More the merrier.
Yeah, the Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative. Thanks for putting that in the chat, Joe.
And only because we're just brainstorming here, I guess. Only because I've kind of been dealing with it the past couple of weeks with some people, and I'm looking at you, Vicky, to see if you've got some thoughts on this. Accessibility, you just said the word, which I've been dealing with this week. Some people not having the skills or the tools to access information and know about things to get help. I was really surprised. The past week, some things came up. Should we all consider something related to housing in that regard? I mean, I'm just thinking about people who don't have access to technology and stuff, as well as who can't read or speak English and stuff like that. Are we having issues that this committee should look at?
I mean, I don't know what we're able to do, but if we could develop best practices as a committee, I think we could easily do that. I will say this really came up during the pandemic for just what you're describing, not only people with disabilities, but those who, English may not be their first language. They don't have access to the technology to use the various things. There were a lot of issues for, the pop-up sites for vaccination and even testing. And so we learned a lot through that, as well as some of the things that were used, technologies such as, what are the barcodes that you scan, the QR codes. Those are so popular now and so inaccessible to so many people. And so just an example, I mean, we really hustled to try to correct a lot of things. So I have a lot of information on that. And like I said, it was kind of related to the pandemic, but would, definitely translate to housing and other things of just best practices for how to put information out, and the technology, and I think some education around technology that people are using, and how do I want to say this? If you put information on a website, if it's not designed properly, even those who are using various assistive technology will not be able to access it. So I'd love to help work on that.
What would be a good way to agendize that for the next meeting so that we kind of capture what we're talking about, and that it also sparks us next time we get together? Best practices for, how would you describe it, Vicki? What would be the?
Well, I'm wondering if we call it more universal access to information. I mean, I think that's the goal, or just or designing information, to be accessible. I mean, the goal is really universal access, and I think in most cases we can do that. I don't want to get off track here. If we could agendize it and we can talk more, there are guidelines for that. Just as an example, there are international guidelines for designing any type of digital document or website, and there's like 3 levels. And so, level A is kind of like minimum, but for anybody that needs to comply with the ADA or Rehabilitation Act Section 508, it might not get you there. So there's like level 2, it's like double A, that'll probably make you compliant with those laws, which is really where the city needs to be. And then there's triple A that really is at universal access. So I think in some of if we design best practices, we could kind of outline that, like, this is kind of the minimum level of accessibility, so that at least most users with, should be able to access it. But if you really want to make things accessible, there's a level 3. So just for example, I use a disability, somebody who's deaf. So if you put a video on your website, it should have closed captions, right? But they don't at level 1A, it doesn't have to be synchronized captions. And if you don't want to do the captions, you can provide an alternate by posting a transcript, like just the text. But that might not make you compliant with the ADA and 508. So ideally, you should have videos with synchronized captioning. But then if you want to make it more universally accessible, at level 3, you have also captioning and sign language interpreters, and then you have those videos in other languages too. I don't know if that helps kind of.
Yeah, Jay, if I can just again expand on it a little bit. For the beginning, I don't want to put any fences on this. I know we're gonna have to pull back when we start really getting into the subject. But I'm thinking about people, as we were talking, I was thinking about people that I interact with. Some can't speak, some can't hear, some can't read, some are blind. I mean, literally blind. You know, I'm thinking of one particular individual who physically he has such limitations and skills. I'm amazed he got housing. It's just I don't know how he found out and how people found him. It was, you know, one of those deals.
I'm just wondering if a way that we can tackle this and something that we can handle is having an agenda item for just starting here with our subcommittee, and make sure that whatever we're doing is meeting all of those guidelines, and that what we're then doing is recommending to the full commission that the commission's work is also meeting, and that we kind of build from there and move outwards. Because I know, Vicky, there have been issues with like the mapping and some other things that related to accessibility. So I wonder if we kind of start small with the idea of kind of building outwards. What do y'all think about taking it on that way?
Yeah, I just had a wide idea that I wanted to share out.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, Jay. I would like to see it get broader though, because I think that the way information is put out, not just by, you know, the city or this department, but we live in an age where there's this assumption that people have access to the internet and then you know, up to date computer technology or smartphones, and that's not the case. Or, you know, people with low income, even if they have the technology, it might be outdated and not compatible with what's being put out. I don't know, there are just so many factors. And even just, I was dealing with this today, like putting things out in plain language instead of just, you know, lingo, and it's complicated. And I swear, no offense to city employees, but I feel like sometimes in government, if there's a complicated way to design it, say it, they'll find it. You know? And anyway, well, and actually, Allison, you were in that one training, I think, that we did on accessible documents, and we just kind of touched on it. We have a basic training, but we talk a lot about that, and just how even writing in plain language really benefits everyone, not just people with disabilities or people who, you know, their first language may not be English. It's just a good design practice, even from a marketing perspective, because it just makes information like readily available and tells people exactly what you want them to know and do. And I mean, that's sort of how we've been trying to frame it, is it's not just an accessibility issue. It's also a principle of like good design and how to market programs, services, whatever.
So how about we put on for the next agenda, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, trying to piece this together, but something like best practices for universal access. And I was going to say universal access to information, but I don't want to limit us, because obviously I've seen that, you know, if we get the agenda item too narrow, then it limits us a little bit. Does that capture it enough for us to talk about it more?
Yeah, or is it like universal design and best practices? Because there are specific universal design principles that, you know, it started with architecture, but that has been adapted. I mean, there are 7 standard principles that you can use and have been adapted for like designing curriculum and education. So maybe if we look at those, I think it would offer a really good guide.
Great. So universal design and best practices. Let's put that on the agenda. Great. What else, y'all? We've got quite a bit. We made some good progress today for things that we want to address and tackle going forward. So anything else? Any other thoughts about moving these items forward or other things that we may want to start talking about as a subcommittee?
I guess I was thinking when you were talking about the Santa Rita Park thing, because that one really is stuck in my craw. And I think that that is an intersection between both infrastructure and planning and homelessness. And so I think allowing in that discussion for talk about homelessness and the fact that, you know, you can fix up any of the parks where homeless folks hang out. That's great. And then where do they go? And there's still not enough housing. So, I mean, I think, it becomes a bigger conversation about, and I want to be sensitive because I think it's great to clean up a park, and the way that they're going to do it is such that it's going to provide a lot of spaces for families and things like that, but it's also going to provide not a lot of spaces for homeless folks to hang out. So it's pretty deliberately pushing them away. And we pushed them out of downtown, right? And they went to Santa Rita Park, and now we're going to push them out of Santa Rita Park, but yet we still haven't really tackled the homelessness problem. I mean, working on it for sure, right? But so I think that larger conversation of it looks really good, especially for those folks that live in the Santa Rita Park area. That's really great. I mean, nobody wants the kinds of things that are happening at that park happening in their backyard, right? But at the same time, the solution isn't just to move folks out into another space.
I wonder if the Housing First subcommittee is talking about this, or where they are with, I mean, this is really kind of their wheelhouse as well, right?
You're looking at me, aren't you?
I'm just putting the question out there. I'm just curious.
Yeah, you asked me the question. I do not have my subcommittee meeting notes on the screen from that subcommittee, so I lack I lack an answer to give to you, man. I apologize. But yeah, it's I'm trying to remember. I can't do it off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember what we were tackling from the last meeting. That's at the top. I apologize, Jay.
No, that's quite all right. I didn't even realize you were on that subcommittee. I was not intentionally putting you on the spot. So, I guess the other thing too is, I feel like one of the things that's interesting about the conversation with homelessness is that I don't know if maybe I don't realize that people do actually understand this, but there's not actually enough places to put all of the homeless folks. It's not like, if only homeless folks would accept housing, they'd be off the streets. It's like, well, they're doing outreach, but at the end of the day, there's such a dearth of, places for housing first, for people to move off the streets into some sort of housing. I mean, it's just like, it's not possible. So, it seems like that piece of the puzzle in terms of homelessness is sometimes missing for me. I don't know if you all feel the same way, but.
Well, and I think that, the conversation that goes in with that is folks get really excited when you talk about shelter, but the problem is people have to have somewhere to go after you put them in shelter. So you can, and I mean, it's a start, and I don't want to bag on anybody's efforts. I mean, at all whatsoever. It's a start to get folks into motels and such, but it's this constant game of then moving people through a system maybe more quickly than they're ready for, and getting them into housing, and then getting them on their own in that housing. And there's just the cycle keeps going, and there definitely is not enough housing for all the folks that need it. And all the studies say that the number of folks experiencing homelessness is just going to keep going up here for the foreseeable future, obviously, because of the cost of housing. And So that will create more folks that experience homelessness, but then it also creates a challenge for the agencies and the governments working because they only have so much money, and that money used to go a lot farther when rent was $700, but now it's $1,200, right? So then you serve less people. So yes, it's an interesting, complicated problem.
Go ahead, Joe.
So as Ernesto was saying in chat, yeah, the Housing First Subcommittee, I don't remember any specific conversations about parks, but the rest of this, the last couple minutes, is the stuff that subcommittee's talking about. I don't think we've really gotten into, how much of trying to get people with low or no incomes into housing and moving them through the continuum, how much that takes, and how that relates to the market rate. And as the market rate keeps rising, that means fewer people that we're able to actually help. But the rest of that is being talked about in that subcommittee, and I try to make it everything I can, but those conversations are happening. I think that subcommittee was just so far behind because it could not meet quota for like 9 months. So now that it has for a few months again, that's good. But there's a lot of catch up. There's a lot of conversation that just hadn't happened yet. And, hopefully will happen in 5 minutes.
Okay. Lori, did you have more? Or you
No,
okay.
nope.
You're just still unmuted. Wanted to.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I just thought you were gonna say something. So y'all, we've got 5 minutes. We have covered a lot of ground. I think agendized probably 4 or 5 or 6 things to talk about next meeting. Obviously, Mike has got to go.
Well, if I leave, will you still have quorum? I mean,
well, but we had only planned to have the meeting
oh, okay.
for an hour anyway, so
Okay.
it's fine. I want to make sure that we're kind of have at least a little bit of time to wrap up. I guess actually there are some other agenda items that I might as well run through real quick in the interest of doing what we got to do here. Number 4 is the HAST implementation. A is draft source of income protection, and B is the affordable housing checklist prioritization tool. I'm not exactly sure why those are on here. Allison, do you have anything related?
Sure. Yeah, I was just kind of give updates on both of those things, and if folks had any feedback or thoughts, they're agendized. So the first one is the source of income protection ordinance, which I know the full commission you discussed, and I think in your inboxes you have a draft letter of support to mayor and council. So that item is likely going to mayor and council for consideration on September 27th. And yeah, there's a website with all the information that you are welcome to see. There's a dashboard of that kind of summarizes the public participation, is kind of the newest thing. You can kind of see how those survey results came out. And then the second piece is the affordable housing checklist prioritization tool. Based on this committee's feedback, we went and over the past several months, Laura has undertaken a process to interview 35 public housing residents, kind of from a broad swath of geographies in the city, and kind of a range of demographics, and did the kind of prioritization tool with them. So I think Vicky maybe wasn't here in January when we went through all of that, but and so I might have to go into more depth at a later time about that process. But basically, it's asked everyone to kind of rank, what's more important to you for where you would want to live, is it more important to be next to a quality school or a high capacity transit line? And then kind of takes the aggregate of those scores to give us an index for citing affordable housing, or helping us make affordable housing decisions. So the outcome of that tool, Laura is crunching that data. The outcome of that will be every single parcel in the city of Tucson will have kind of a score based on those aggregate measures. That will help us in a future call for projects for some of our housing funds. And so that's kind of where that is. And we can give more in-depth overview at a later date. And Laura is presenting that to the Housing First subcommittee. So if folks want to jump on that one at 4 and have nothing else to do, you're welcome to do that as well. So, but that's where we are.
Great, thanks, Allison. Just in the interest of time, I'm gonna do number 5, call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the commission